Hi, I'm Tom Stimson and welcome to AV Matters. In this episode, we're going to talk about KPIs, key performance indicators. What you're asking me is, you know you need to look at metrics, you know you need to track metrics, but which ones and where do they come from? So let's talk about this for a little bit. There are three kinds of KPIs. There are quantitative, there are mini P&Ls, and there's qualitative. Quantitative are the easiest ones to understand because they're simple math. So some quantitative metrics that we're going to find often in rental and staging companies is cost of goods sold. And this is the one that most of us are familiar with. We see it on a job cost basis, on a project by project measurement, and we see it over time, over a month or over a year, to understand what our cost of goods sold is on a normal basis. But within cost of goods sold are some other very interesting quantitative metrics. We have our sub-rental number as a percentage of revenue. We have direct labor as a percentage of revenue. We have trucking, shipping, travel. These are all normal costs related to doing events that we can measure as a percentage of revenue. And over time, we'll see the trends for what is normal over time. We're too used to looking at it on a cost-by-cost basis. So when I'm talking about key performance indicators, I do want to separate the idea of job costing and looking at metrics on a job cost basis, which is one project at a time, versus a key performance indicator, which is going to look at those metrics over time. Now, you don't have travel or you may not have logistics on every single job, so getting a key performance indicator may not make sense, but we may have another way of doing that in the mini P&L. A mini P&L KPI is when we take something like travel expense and compare it to travel revenue. So if my top of my P&L is the revenue side, what I charge for travel, the cost of goods sold side is what I spent for that travel. Now, right now, some of you are getting sick to your stomach because you know that you have some of these KPIs that are going to be upside down. For instance, trucking and shipping. It's not unusual in the rental staging industry to have less trucking revenue than you have trucking expense. And the reason is simple. It's a hard thing to justify to your clients to pay for, and so we hide it in other things. That's okay. Even if the number is negative, in other words, you spend more than you take in, it's still a number that's worth tracking. So here's a chance where your KPI is something that you want to figure out how to minimize. If I can increase the amount of revenue, my KPI will improve. If I can reduce the amount of expense, my KPI will improve. So improving a negative number is still an improvement. So we still want to watch these KPIs. On a mini P&L, I can look at equipment income versus sub-rental expense plus depreciation expense. That's a fantastic KPI. That tells me how much money I'm actually making when I rent or budget equipment into a project. I can also look at cost of sales KPIs. A cost of sales KPI would be sales compensation to revenue. So let's think about this. If I'm paying $100,000 for a salesperson, how much revenue is that salesperson bringing in? I could look at an entire team of salespeople or an entire sales department and make an evaluation and track that number over time. That's not only a KPI, it's also a mini P&L. The third piece of this is a real hard one to get your head around until you start to think about it. Qualitative metrics. These are metrics that are based on evaluation. Let's think about some things that we can evaluate on a monthly or even project basis. The number of mistakes. Well, I can measure the number of mistakes, but what do I call a mistake? If I figure out what to call a mistake and I start counting them, all of a sudden I have another KPI that's very valuable. When do I make my most mistakes? And what do I compare the number of mistakes to? If my revenue goes up, do my mistakes go up? Or do I make more mistakes when my revenue is low? That would be great information to have. Another qualitative metric that we've started using in some of my clients is stress levels. You could have a real busy month and stress levels are probably going to go up, but will they skyrocket? When are your stress levels the highest? When are you the most disorganized? That's probably when they're the highest. So if we start to track stress levels, we'll start to get a sense for what the patterns are. And sometimes the highest stress is when you have the lowest expectation of being stressful. And in the months where you expect to be stressed, your stress is a little bit lower because you're actually prepared for it. So tracking stress levels is a great way of getting your finger on the pulse of the organization. Another qualitative metric is peer-to-peer approval. You'll find that as your stress levels go up, your peers' feelings and thoughts towards each other may go down. We can track this as well. Are my teams working well together? Are we doing the things that are going to help people communicate better? In which case, all of a sudden a peer-to-peer approval rating would be very relevant to my project. If we added new software and we did a good job of preparing that software, implementing it, and training the people to do it, I can track peer-to-peer approval and have some sense of how well we're doing with that. And over time, as I introduce individuals who aren't well trained to the process, I might see peer-to-peer approval going down. And these become indicators. So key performance indicators. Indicator is the important word here. If something changes, we need to know why. And while the indicator itself may be neither good nor bad, it might just be information. If we can explain why something changes, maybe it is a normal change. If we can't explain why the KPI has changed, then management needs to look at it a little bit closer and try and understand it better. Because we may be missing an opportunity to improve customer service, make more money, increase revenue, or have just better overall satisfaction with how we run our jobs. Your managers need KPIs. They're asking for them, they just don't know what to ask for. So sit down, think about the things that matter in your organization, and find a way to measure them. And look at them every month. I'm Tom Stimson. Thanks for watching.